Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show. A startling day of competing and clashing headlines. I begin with the violence. The FBI investigating the Tsarnaev brothers, the Boston Marathon bombing, questioning a suspect in Florida. We do not have details. We have his name. He is dead. Said to have attacked an FBI agent or agents, under interrogation or anticipating more interrogation, possibly linking him to a 2011 murder on 9/11/2012. He may be a suspect. He may have been. So should the Tsarnaev brothers. He is dead. A Chechen national, like the Tsarnaev brothers, who may have held a ticket back to the North Caucasus. Dead. More information forthcoming we can anticipate. But the Boston Marathon bombing is not done as an investigation. More violence. London, late in the news cycle, in South London, Woolwich, near a military base. Two men, you can see them on the video, you can see them on the front pages of the European papers right now. They are startling headlines. Two men attacked another man said to be a soldier or a member of the UK military, murdered him horribly, and then stood for 20 minutes or so with their bloody hands and their bloody weapons, and the police arrived. In these 20 minutes, they testified to people with iPhones. Everybody has a video these days. And what they said was threatening and bizarre, but they did not seem in any way to want to flee. They stood there until the police arrived. They charged the police, we're told. It's early days. All this can be or not be confirmed in the next 24 hours. The police shot them. They're now in custody. There is an emergency meeting at the cabinet level. Mr. Cameron, the Prime Minister, making statements. The Mayor of London making statements. A bizarre attack. There's no analysis at this point. Well, wait. We do not have the names of the attackers. We do not have their country of origin. We do not know if they're UK citizens or not. Now we come to the nonviolent headlines of the day. Late in the day, the Department of Justice making an announcement that it does not wiretap journalists. Does not. Using the word wiretap. I can analyze that. We do have information that the AP phone lines have been accessed in an investigation for a leak from state. The same for phone lines from Fox News reporters and one reporter in person, James Rosen. But I cannot explain why the justice is now claiming they do not wiretap. Also, with regard to the scandals in Washington, Lois Lerner, who is the executive still on the chart, in charge of the EO unit in Cincinnati, much in review because of the revelations of these last weeks. You're very familiar, having to do with Tea Party or Patriot Party applying for 501c4 status as nonprofits, being scrutinized and harassed. She went before Darrell Ison's committee in Washington and took the Fifth Amendment, made statements, took the Fifth Amendment, refused to answer questions. There is now the matter late in the day that her Fifth Amendment may have been waived by her prior cooperation with investigators and her prior misleading or said to be misleading statements to Congress. That goes into the hands of the courts. There's more, of course, but that's the competing headlines. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com joins me. Gordon, a very good evening to you. The news is busy on this side of the planet. It's tragic in Florida. It's tragic in London. And we go to Asia because Xi Jinping, the new boss in China, is also making startling decisions, but this time it's for censorship and censorship of his own people. What is the significance of these new decisions by the new boss in China, Gordon?
Xi Jinping is the new Chinese leader, and so everyone wants to know, is he a liberal? Is he a reformer? Is he going to be regressive? And what he's doing is he's giving us the first hints of where he's going to take China, supposedly over the next 10 years, but I don't think he's going to last that long.
We welcome Sarah Cook, a senior research analyst for Freedom on the Net, and she's also at and East Asia at Freedom House. Sarah, a very good evening to you. Thank you for this. Gordon has pointed me to revelations over these last days. For example, in an article in The Guardian written by a man whose nom de guerre here is Murong Shukon, that the Xi Jinping decision is to censor, is to abuse, is to harass bloggers on the internet in China. Who are they and how are they being abused? Good evening, Sarah.
Hi, good evening. Well, I think what's interesting with this particular individual and some of the other people who have been struck with these cases of having their microblog, like on Twitter-like accounts, suddenly shut down over the last week is that a lot of these people, they're intellectuals, they're liberals, they talk about political reform, political change, but they're not really hardcore activists. So these are people who, the fact that they're able to have over several million followers already indicates that these are people that are, they're moderates. These aren't people who are calling for, that are even being very direct always in their criticism of the Chinese government. So the fact that a series of these intellectuals have had their accounts shut down now, I would say, indicates kind of tightening and a sense that even people who were maybe previously safe in a very restricted environment are now finding themselves also being targeted and silenced.
Sarah, in recent days, there have been reports that Xi Jinping wants to implement 7 broad restructuring initiatives. Yet at the same time, we've learned that the government has now something called the 7 don't mentions, or the 7 evils. What are the 7 evils, and what's the significance of all this?
Well, it hasn't been fully confirmed that there were these directives, but there have been multiple reports that really coming from the top echelons of the Communist Party. There are reports coming down that, especially at academic institutions, professors were being told not to discuss in class broad issues related to democracy and freedom, like press freedom, judicial independence, civil rights, civil society, as well as things that have traditionally been very sensitive to the party, like the party's historical crimes and violence, political campaigns under Mao, and things like that. So it seems that, that's what people on the internet in China have been referring to as the 7 don't mentions, which again would indicate a level of restrictiveness that we haven't seen up until now, where often there's very sensitivity around specific issues or abuses, but people are able to talk in principle about judicial independence or press freedom, including at universities, and the idea that professors might be restricted from doing that would be, again, another level of restrictions on academic freedom.
Sarah, this is very interesting, where at the same time we have all these tantalizing hints of economic reform, we also have these reports of political crackdown. And the question is, can you have fundamental economic restructuring at the same time that you have the political system lurching backwards? It really seems to be a dilemma, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's really the big question facing the leadership, is whether they're able to pull that off, because more and more the issues, not just related to the economy, but related to corruption, related to environmental pollution, it's very difficult to resolve those issues that are causing protests and causing discontent in China without things like press freedom or an independent judiciary. So that's really the catch-22 and the big question of, would they really be able, even if they undertook economic reforms but didn't allow for this other kind of openness, to address the very deep-seated grievances that more and more Chinese people are voicing.
Let's talk about how big this blogger is in China until it was entirely wiped out. These 1,900 Weibo messages, more than 200,000 words, each written about all these passionate topics. And how many followers do we believe he has, Sarah?
So across the multiple different platforms, he said he had 8.5 million followers. And if you look on like a ranking of Twitter, that's actually more, for instance, than, say, the New York Times or Conan O'Brien or LeBron James have. So you're talking about someone, now in China that's small change. There are people who have 35 million followers because it's such an enormous population of internet users. But 8.5 million, this isn't just some nobody. This is someone who really had
and they're wiped out. They're gone.
To hear what he said.
They're gone forever. His accounts at Sina, Tencent, NetEase, and Sohu, he has no access to them.
He has no access to them. Even if they were to reopen, it's not clear that he'd be able to recover the previous messages. And he's reported that, in his attempts to try to so-called reincarnate, that those attempts have been unsuccessful. So it's not clear when he'll be able
Gordon, how does the state gain from this? Clearly they get a lot of attention in The Guardian. We talk about it tonight. How does this help Xi Jinping?
Well, it really doesn't, because at the end of the day, although they do intimidate people, they don't intimidate people enough, and they keep on coming back and back and back. Like this guy says he's going to reincarnate, and he's going to inspire a dozen other people to do the same thing.
Sarah Cook, Senior Research Analyst for Freedom on the Net and East Asia at Freedom House, Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. I'm John Batchelor.